Yesterday we got a text message about Jeff saying that he was sick and that Becky wasn't feeling good either. So I just sent back a text saying, if you need anything, let me know. And then I got an email with sermon notes. Jeff is not doing well and Becky was not sounding good either, so they can't even go see their new grandbaby right now. They really don't even need to be having Boone, so Kaz's parents have stayed an extra few days to take care of Boone, so please make sure you're praying for the Kreider and the Grimshaw family. But this lesson, as I was looking over the notes, first of all, I think anybody could stand up here and read what Jeff had put down here, and we would have a great lesson. You'd get some odd stories because they wouldn't be about whoever was telling them, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to be up here. For those of you that know me and have ever played games with me, you know that I'm a rule follower. There's a joke in our family that if anybody needs to know the rules to a game, they just ask me and usually roll their eyes as they're doing so. And that really worked well as I was a teacher. Being a rule follower, expecting people to follow those rules was good. I've got a couple of young adults that were in my youth group. I saw Logan and Carly were here. I'm sure a few others of you are here that I hadn't seen. But along with being a rule follower, as I became a youth minister and in charge of the well-being of their lives at times, I became extremely worried and antsy a lot. I became, not only, I guess a good way to put it was that I was very cautious. And so imagine one of my very first things that I did when I got here was in the fall, I took a bunch of junior hires to camp, and we even took a walk up to Inspiration Point. And to this day, every time I'm up there, I feel like I need to yell at Logan or Carly to get away from the edge at Inspiration Point. Logan did it just because I told him not to, and Carly did it because she had apparently scaled many mountains with her father and knew everything there was to know about being at Camp Neotes. So, seriously, I would be looking this way, and without even looking, I would yell at Logan, and he'd be behind me to get away from the edge. So that's just kind of the person that I became whenever I was with them. And so I enjoyed telling them stories about, I can only imagine that they thought I was some kid growing up. I was the one who told on other kids and who followed all the rules. I've got at least one of those. One of my kids is that way right now. But I can just imagine what they thought about the type of kid I was. So I love telling them stories about ways that I had screwed up. I remember sharing a story about how I had forged my mom's name on a test that she was supposed to sign. And I got caught, and because I think the first time I did it, it said Mrs. Picker. So I got caught, and I got in trouble, and I got one of those, when I got home, it was one of those go to your room and wait till your dad gets home type things, and I started crying 3 hours before my dad got home, because I knew what was coming. I didn't really learn my lesson because I did it again. And this time I was a little smarter. I traced my mom's signature. But I remember sitting in the principal's office, and I can still remember Dr. Smith telling me if I did it again, I was going to get suspended. And the fear that was in me, and so I can only imagine that they didn't believe me or wasn't sure if those stories were really true. I tell my kids those stories, but sometimes. Some days I come home and I start talking to my kids, and I may have even had a good day, but I start talking to them, and all of a sudden, like one of them, and Kennedy's sitting right here, so I won't tell any stories on her, but sometimes there's something that they do, and I don't know what happens to me. I just came home, and I was angry. I had no reason to be angry, but there was something inside of me, and one of them did something. And I just snapped. I wish I could say that this happened just once. Kennedy's shaking her head already. But it didn't just happen once. And I was just mad. Sent her up to her room, and I remember coming into the office the next day, and I was talking to Jeff about it, and she's saying, I don't know what happened. I just snapped. And then we started talking about the lessons for the next couple weeks, and it was the fruits of the Spirit, and boy, that really made me feel good inside. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And I started asking, how can I sit here in your office day after day talking about these things as we prepare for each Sunday, and I go home and I just snap. I'm just angry. See, I've always considered myself to be a decent person, and I'm reminded that I am not good. See, goodness for a human being is doing what is right or best for others. Goodness for a human being is doing what is right and best for others. It's others-centered. See, you remember what Jesus said when somebody called him a good teacher? In Luke 18, verse 19, he said, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except the Father." See, so the statement that he's talking about, it says a lot to us. It says a lot about what it means to be good. And Jeff's lesson last week on kindness, and this week's lesson on goodness, tie very closely together. But that passage right there is telling us that God is good. God is good. And I think we know that, and those two things are very closely intertwined. You know, God is good, and good is God. Goodness is Godness. See, last week when Jeff talked about kindness, that idea of mercy and enduring love and steadfast love, he is the source of all of those things. He is the source of goodness. By comparison, as it says in Isaiah 64:6, our acts of goodness are like filthy rags before God. So we're not going to compare our goodness to God's goodness, because there isn't a comparison. So God is good. And that passage also shares that we are not good. We do some good things, and I think that we fall for that lie. How many of you have ever said, well, I don't do that, so I'm okay? I remember in junior high, I think my whole existence was based on, well, I don't do that, so I'm okay. I don't say those words, so I'm okay. I don't lie to my parents, so I'm okay. I'm good. Has anybody ever said that? I give my money, I go to church, so I'm good. So we are good compared to other people, is what's going on in our minds. And we have that comparison going on. Jesus says that no one is good. You're not as good as you think you are. It points it out, Bible points it out in many ways. I know in Romans 7, verse 18, it says, "For I know that good itself does not dwell in me. That is, in my sinful nature, I have the desire to do what is good, but I can't carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I don't want to do, this I keep doing." We are not good. I thought about that statement, and then I thought about this lady. This is my grandma. My grandma they've been missionaries over in what used to be Czechoslovakia. That's my grandma and my grandpa. Fred and Sybil Picker, they live down in Searcy. My grandpa has He helped build the Fairview Heights Church. He helped start Camp Nietes. My grandma was there right by his side every step of the way. He was a preacher, he was an elder, and now, a few times a week, they volunteer at hospitals. When I think of good, I think of them a lot of times. Not even grandma's good. I'm not going to tell her that. She makes some of the best snickerdoodles I've ever had in this world, and I want to keep receiving them. But the funny thing is that my grandma knows this. She knows that she's not good. There are levels and there's layers to goodness and the actions and the motivations and the intentions that we have. Only God is good. Here's the kicker, though. We are called to be good. That seems extremely crazy whenever I've just said that Jesus said that no one is good except for God. And so, but we're called to be good. Genuinely good. To become something that is not of our nature. To become something that doesn't come from us. So that only leads to the idea that we have to access it. We have to obtain it from the source of goodness. And that's God. You know, throughout history, a lot of moral values, who people are, has been passed down by stories, by example. And so I thought about how we get our moral values, how our kids get their moral values through movies, TV shows that they watch, books that they read, friends at school, teachers. I'm okay with some of that. I mean, I see a lot of you out there that are teachers, and I'm okay if my kids are in your class. But that's how we tend to get or set up our value system, is by what we see in our culture. Even our heroes and villains of this world it's so skewed. What some people think is a hero, others think is a villain. And it takes us comparing all of that to God. Because those things are this culture. They're not God. If we want to obtain that goodness, if we want to be called to goodness as Christ has called us to be, we have to know where to obtain it. We have to know how to access it. So how do we grow in God's goodness? First is confession. See, we live in a self-help culture. If you don't know how to act, or if you don't think you're a good enough person, let's Google how to be better. Let's read a book on how to be better. Let's read a book on what to do. Let's ask somebody else, how can I become that? It's so easy. This is a big reason why I'm terrified to hand my child a smartphone, is because they have the world at their fingertips. They want to know anything, they can access it. Just by Googling something or watching a YouTube video. We can't manufacture this goodness through self-help books, through anything that we read. We can't access it. We cannot make it. We can only get it from God. He hands it out abundantly. But it's based on our admission of that need to be good. If we continue to try to create the goodness ourselves, that false goodness comes from us. It is not God. And we forget that if we just ask him, if we just come to him, let him know that we know we're not good enough. We know that we are not good. God, only good can come from you. He hands that out. And we become good not because of us, but because we are clothed in Christ, but because we have wrapped ourselves with God. We can dwell upon God's goodness. The last verse of Psalm 23, David says, "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life." It's a weird verse because I don't know that I want it to follow me. I feel like I want God's goodness and God's grace to be with me. Then you look at that word, the actual Hebrew word that's used there is called, I'm probably going to say it wrong. Michael, you can help me out. He left. Sorry. Radaf is the word, and it actually means to pursue, or to run after, or to chase. It says that God's goodness, God's mercy is chasing after us. Think about that for a moment. Who he is and who he wants us to be, it's coming after us. That is something that I want coming after me, because it seems like I do everything in my power to run away from it. I do everything in my power to not stop and to look at what I try to manufacture that goodness. If I can just know that it comes from God, if I can sit and be with God, he will pursue me. He will run after me with a vengeance to give me his goodness and his mercy. And he will do this every single day. I think that's the thing that I love, is that I want to wake up every morning, and this is what I want to challenge my kids with, to wake up every morning and to come before God and say, God, I am not worthy of your love, but today I want to try. I failed yesterday. Today I need you again. And just maybe every day we can realize a little bit more that God is also running after us. See, and there's a lot of times we think that if we don't become good enough, that we're not going to receive God's blessings. That we have gone too far away from God. See, and I said he pursues us, and I believe that. And there is no distance that is far enough that God cannot pursue us. He will help us, and I think he will surprise us with his goodness. See, we put up that barrier between us and God. We're too far away. Maybe we put up that barrier of sinfulness. I've sinned so much, and God is saying, you can't sin too much to where I am not going to give you my goodness. Maybe it's that we feel too inadequate. And that's when God is saying, turn to me and I'll be your strength. We are never too far away. We are never too sinful. We are never so inadequate that God is not pursuing us. He wants you. The loving kindness of God, his goodness, and his mercy are eternal. It's persistent, and it's stubborn. He won't turn his back on you, and he won't give up or let go. As we get ready to start 2017, that is the message that I needed to hear. As I was reading these notes last night, as I was poring over them this morning with a cup of coffee, I kept realizing that this is the way I want to love. This is the way I want to love my wife. I want to love my kids. I want to love you. And I can't. I can't. But God does. And he doesn't stop. No matter what barriers we put in place, he doesn't stop. Goodness and God's loving kindness. These past 2 weeks, those are the words that we've talked about. God's goodness and God's loving kindness. As we go into 2017, I pray that these are 2 words that we write on our hearts, knowing that they're not anything that can come out of who we are, but it comes from God. It comes from who he is. And our job is to be with him. Our job is to let him pursue us and to live his love out towards other people. Let's stand and sing.